What's up everybody? My name is Vincent. Welcome to Cryptolution, where we talk about everything under the moon in the crypto universe. Today is Friday, April 4th. Now in today's video, we have to talk about some breaking news, and that is Dog is going to be going to Cardano. Operation Dog Domination is still in effect. But not only are we going to be covering that, we also have to be talking about what Cointelegraph has released in its newest article talking about the resurgence of Bitcoin DeFi. That article I think will be very insightful for you to understand how early we are into this emerging ecosystem. And also I want to share with you why we may have seen the bottom in the crypto market. Now we do know that President Trump announced reciprocal tariffs around the world, but Bitcoin, surprisingly enough, has outperformed even the S&P 500. I'm going to share with you why there is manipulation in the market, we're at the bottom, and we're getting ready for a huge run up. So let's go ahead and cover it in this video. So smash up that like button, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to join our X platform, and please be careful with any of the scammers down in the comments below. I will never reach out via WhatsApp, Telegram, direct message, or email, so please be careful and invest safely. So guys and girls, let's get right into it. So Dog Bitcoin right now is up 2.13% over the past 24 hours. And I think that's mainly due to Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin's price is actually doing quite well, pumping, because the whole dip that we just saw over the past 24 hours from 88,000 to 81,000 was pretty much manipulation, but also a reaction to President Trump's reciprocal tariffs that were just announced. So obviously you're seeing that Bitcoin's price is actually coming back up 3% over those past 24 hours. Now the last thing I want to cover is how Dog stands in the coin market cap's meme coin sector. So it is up 2%, down 20% over the past 7 days. I think that this will be back in the top 200 range pretty soon. Now there is some news that I'm going to share with you regarding Bitcoin DeFi and Cardano at the very end of the video, but first we need to cover the overall market. So yesterday we saw that the S&P 500 and also the US stock market lost roughly around $2.8 trillion just because of this announcement of the tariffs. But believe it or not, there is data that proves retail investors bought the dip. They bought $4.7 billion in stocks yesterday. To me, this is amazing because this is the most in a decade. We haven't seen a massive dip in the stock market since 2020 of the pandemic. That was the most recent one. So because people saw this massive dip, you saw retail investors, okay, not just like institutions. I'm talking about normal people that bought the dip. Now, 4.7 billion is not that much compared to $2.8 trillion, but these are the smart investors. This is how smart money works, even with retail. So cryptocurrency people are doing that as well. Now, what we do need to know is that institutions bought the dip on Bitcoin. Now, even though the world was reacting to these tariffs, you saw that Grayscale, Fidelity, ARK Invest, and even BlackRock was buying Bitcoin. This is how these big entities win over retail investors. But what you do need to know is that these tariff announcements that were just released was the most bearish event, I believe, in 2025. And pretty much what we saw in Bitcoin's price in the crypto market, taking a full dip, it was all fully priced in. In fact, you start to see that Bitcoin is actually doing quite well and didn't really dip as much as the S&P 500, which I'll share with you at the very end of the video. So right now, I think there's going to be a lot of negotiations between the countries and the US, but to me, I think it's very bullish for Bitcoin in 2025. I mean, just look at what Arthur Hayes had to say around the dollar value, which is basically weakening alongside foreigners selling US tech stocks and bringing money back home to the United States. This is good for Bitcoin and for gold over the medium term, not the long term, the short to immediate term. So let's also talk about other things. Rates are going to move down. The US dollar is falling hard. Money supply is increasing. This is perfect for Bitcoin. And we can't not ignore the manipulation within the market. If you don't know, Binance and Wintermute have been kind of working in cahoots with each other, pretty much selling a lot of different major assets such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Sui, and many other major assets. So obviously whatever happens to Bitcoin and also top layer 1 solutions such as Ethereum and Solana, it's going to obviously affect every other cryptocurrency, especially meme coins. But that to me just goes to show like they want to manipulate the price so that they can buy it back in later. And it's because they know this, is that Bitcoin has not experienced its next leg up to its new higher high. And it just makes sense with this red trend line that eventually, because we're right here, that we're gonna reach that new top at one point or another, and it could happen by July of this year. And that could mean that Bitcoin could reach between 150,000 to over 250,000 at that time. And what we need to focus on is the global M2 money supply shared by Colin Talks Crypto. And as you can see, Bitcoin is doing a lot better than the S&P 500. So this is the orange line compared to the blue line. So today is April 4th. By April 6th, we could see a local M2 bottom of the money supply. So that's when we may see consolidation within the month of April. And then by May 1st, we could see the projection of Bitcoin and major cryptocurrency, especially dog Bitcoin, continue its uprise to new all-time highs. So let's talk about the emerging sector of Bitcoin DeFi. So this is Bitcoin DeFi right now. Back in 2020 up until 2023, I was only talking about Solana and Ethereum DeFi. And I would see images like this, where it would show you the entire ecosystem between gaming, stable coins, DeFi, lending platforms, wallets, so forth, so on. And it would look something like this, which basically everything looks kind of small. You're seeing the very early stages of basically the emerging sectors and emerging companies building on top of that ecosystem. So this gives me a lot of nostalgia within Solana and Ethereum. So now we're seeing the exact same thing with Bitcoin native DeFi. It's actually very small. So a year from now, I'll look back on this specific image and it will be explosive. It will be very huge, very large, a lot of different companies. And why is this very important? Because Cointelegraph just released an article today saying that Bitcoin DeFi surge may boost Bitcoin demand and adoption. And in fact, Bitcoin DeFi has surged more than 2,700% over the past year, just the past year. So imagine what's going to happen in 2025. I imagine it's going to surge much more than that, over 10,000% and higher, because the amount of liquidity on Bitcoin is $1.8 trillion to $2 trillion compared to Solana and Ethereum that's only in the multi-billions of dollars, or it's more like, hundreds of billions of dollars for Ethereum and 30 to maybe even 50, 80 billion dollars on Solana. So this is actually much bigger than those two other chains. And this is why I think it's going to go way past 10,000% in 2025. So you can imagine what's going to happen with Dog Bitcoin being the #1 meme coin on Bitcoin. So here's the breaking news, okay? So we do know that Operation Dog Domination is still in effect. So Dog is now on Solana, but now Dog is going to be announced on Cardano next week thanks to Fluid Token. Their CTO just announced that next week, the first step should arrive. You'll be able to trade Dog on Cardano. It's just the first step, meaning to bridge back to Bitcoin, there are some steps that will be needed. Final step is reducing this to minimum effort for users. So this is huge. Remember, we talked about how the main point of Operation Dog Domination is to provide buy buttons in every single sector as much as possible, from decentralized exchanges to different blockchains, but also centralized exchanges as well, even mobile apps such as maybe Robinhood one day, Moonshot, and soon Slingshot, and also Vector.fun, which are available right now. So this is really exciting. I cannot wait for the Cardano fans, the Cardano users, to be able to buy the wrap version of Dog on Bitcoin. Now let's go ahead and cover the charting and analysis. So this is Dog right now. And as I mentioned before, based on the MACD, we are reducing the selling pressure and we're hopping more into a buyer's market. That's why we're seeing this blue and red line go up and up and up. It's very similar to this sector right here. And as you can see, it flipped into the major buyer's market right over here. And we stayed up there for quite some time. And that's why you're seeing that reflection into the chart right here. So you're going to possibly see this happening very soon. But this is a new box that I've created right here, which is called max pain. So this is the buy zone, but this is the max pain zone. So this means that we've never reached this level before in terms of Dog's price, but this is like the major buy zone. This is where huge discounts are made, and I actually bought a ton today as we speak. But also another thing I want to share with you that I didn't share in yesterday's video is this. Now this is the MACD on the weekly time frame, and the reason that's important is because you're starting to see weakening sell pressure, which are these light pink bars, these histogram bars right here. And as you can see, sooner or later, once that does flip to the blue section, which is these blue bars, these blue histogram bars, you'll see something like this, which is going to be massively to the upside, past $1 billion. So everything in a nutshell, this is the reason why Bitcoin is pumping. It's because of Bitcoin's price, because these reciprocal tariffs was just kind of a fake out for people in the S&P 500 and the stock market and in the cryptocurrency market. But I think sooner or later, you're going to start to see Bitcoin reach into the $500 million, to the $1 billion, into the multi-billions of dollars, this super cycle. So this to me seems like the bottom of all bottoms. So April will be a boring month. It'll be a month of consolidation, but that's the time for you to execute, deploy capital in your favorite assets. To me, that's always going to be Bitcoin. And I will continue to dollar cost average as much as possible for Bitcoin because I know the upside to this. So with that said, let me know your thoughts down below and I cannot wait to read them. So please smash up that like button, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to join our X platform to receive all of our alpha calls and updates regarding Bitcoin. Until then, see you guys girls next time.